Hello and welcome to the Southern Star's Coronavirus Podcast. I'm the news editor, Siobhan Cronin.
And I'm the editor, Con Downing.
And each week we'll be talking to people at the centre of the COVID-19 crisis in West Cork and beyond. We'll also take a look at that week's Southern Star newspaper and how our reporters across the region are covering the pandemic and other news. This week we will also have some lovely music from a local choir that has made a great video for YouTube. Also in this week's podcast, I will be talking to three people involved in tourism who will discuss the challenging future for the sector in West Cork. But first, Con, let's take a look at this week's paper.
Yes, Siobhan, well, this is it. The front page lead is about cocaine in West Cork, and inside there is a very good two-page feature, mainly written by Kieran O'Mahony, and it delves into the whole scenario with cocaine in West Cork, which is becoming the drug of acceptance, according to Inspector Dave Callan, who's the head of the drug squad in Bandon for West Cork. Now, they have put a lot of resources into tackling drugs here, and the Garda Síochána set up Operation Tara, which is in every, there's a drugs squad in every division now, and they have in West Cork alone they have 8 CAB profilers, and these are people who are looking at people who are flaunting wealth to see if they're involved in the drugs trade, and they have made a number of successful seizures of not just cocaine but also assets. In terms of cocaine seizures over the last since the start of last year, there's been over 170,000 euros worth of cocaine seized from various people around West Cork. And of course, then we've also had the smuggling aspect of it studied over the past 10 years, maybe longer. We've had big multi-million seizures from yachts off the coasts. And in fact, there's a reference in the piece to the fact that the Young Offenders film was originally sparked by this big huge seizure in Dunlock Bay, just off the Mizzen Head. So, you know, there's a lot involved in it. But we had there's been a lot of convictions as well too, and Inspector Callahan warned about the fact that young people are going into this blindly and not caring where the money is going. In fact, Judge McNulty said that the money people give in buying cocaine is supporting a really murderous enterprise, and it's putting money into and profits into the pockets of dangerous men. So there's been a lot of talk about cocaine, and this is all reflected. Of course, we also have the Tabor Lodge, who are the other side of it as well, too, dealing with people with addictions. So yes, there's a lot of reading in this 2-page special in the paper, so worth getting the paper just for a read of that alone.
Absolutely, and the lead story there makes mention of the families who have to take out loans, you know, to pay for drug deaths, probably as a result of intimidation by drugs gangs. And that used to be an issue in Dublin and Cork, but it's actually infiltrating everywhere now at this stage. It's no longer a preserve of the big cities.
That's it. And Inspector Callan also says that a debt that could start at 3,000 could end up costing 7,000, and they pushers that on extra interest and whatever else to it.
At the end of the week. Within a week.
Yes, exactly, which is frightening, especially for the families who have to go and bail out. And the people involved and take loans to do so.
Yes. And there's also a story that Kieran O'Mahony broke exclusively last week on our social media platforms, and that was that Councillor Paul Hayes had resigned from Sinn Féin. So we're following up on that again this week, Con.
That's right. There's a very good interview with Paul on in the paper, and He tells the background to why he left Sinn Féin, and I suppose the nub of the matter is that he didn't manage to get a Seanad nomination, a nomination to run for the Seanad, and this hugely disappointed him after he going so close in the general election to getting elected. And it is ironic that Sinn Féin haven't got any representative, or haven't had any representative in West Cork for years, because West Cork was the hotbed of Sinn Féin representation way back around the time of the War of Independence, with people like Michael Collins and so on like that. And now there isn't anybody in the area. There's only one Sinn Féin councillor on the Cork County Council now, that Paul Hayes has stepped aside. Now he has decided he's going to complete his term as a county councillor under the independent banner. But no doubt some of the parties will be looking to poach him if they possibly can, because he seems to be a very popular sort of a guy around the place, and would be a good asset to any party, really.
A very good operator at council level too, I think, and very high profile in the community, especially in the Court MacTimleague area.
That's right.
And also, there's a lovely, from the same area, I suppose, really, there's a nice picture of Margaret Crowley's 100th birthday in a time of social distancing.
That's right, yes. Margaret Crowley celebrated her 100th birthday last Friday, and the community really rode in together to make it memorable. Obviously, because of cocooning and social distancing, it wasn't possible to have a proper party. No doubt that will follow at a later date, but there was a presentation made to her by the local community council, and people gathered outside her house where she set out at the door, and then there was a big cavalcade of cars passed by then at mid-afternoon then on Friday, to let the people of the area give a chance to extend their best wishes to her. So it was probably the next best thing to the party. Exactly,
and it's gorgeous pictures there by Martin Walsh. Yes. And a few inside as well, I think. There's also a story on the front, Con, about the pubs. Now, it's been very high profile, the campaign by the vintners, the two main vintners organisations, about getting the pubs maybe open a bit earlier than the government is planning. But interestingly, the people we spoke to in West Cork, publicans, are not that keen on going back too early.
Yeah, the problem there is that the smaller pubs would have huge difficulty fitting a lot of people into them with the social distancing requirements that will still exist. It's fine for some of the bigger pubs in Dublin, in cities and bigger towns, especially the ones that do food. But most of the pubs around here do not have a food trade, and policing the restrictions would definitely be a step too far for most publicans, because like not only would they be taking responsibility for themselves, they'd probably have to maybe employ a bouncer at the door. Maybe it might only be possible to let 10 or 12 people in, and then when the next 10 or 12 come along, they'll have to be refused, which publicans feel isn't fair. And they'd also have to be policing the toilet area as well. So the extra costs involved in that, and also the making distinctions between people, sort of runs against the whole ethos of most small pubs, family-run pubs. So they're not in a hurry to reopen. I mean, they probably will have to maybe wait until a vaccine is found, which could be a long, long time away. I mean, probably won't be before the end of this calendar year. So it means that these pubs will probably stay closed until it's safe to reopen. I think, in fairness to all the publicans, they're not motivated by money, but I think by health concerns.
Yeah. Absolutely. And on another political story there on page 3, we have that interesting story about Minister Jim Daly. Now, he's saying he hasn't been sidelined by Simon Harris, but anyone who knows Jim will know he's been unusually quiet over the last few months. He did say he was resigning before the election, but he's still actually in situ as the junior health minister.
Yeah.
And he's just saying that there was a government decision for the junior ministers not to basically get involved, to muddy the message. But I did notice that Patrick O'Donovan, the Junior Finance Minister, has been quite vocal in the past few days. So I'm not sure what the story is with that, but Jim is doing something else in the meantime, isn't he, Con?
That's right. He's volunteering as a kitchen porter in Clonakilty Community Hospital, which is very admirable. And I suppose, he's in a very invidious position because he didn't go for election. He's no longer a TD, and technically he is still the Minister of State for Mental Health and Older People. And I think the Alone charity, which deals with the elderly, has been saying that he's conspicuous by his absence, really, and that there needs to be more coming from his side of the department. But as you said, it seems that while he hasn't been sidelined, he hasn't been allowed to do any media interviews. That's the preserve now of just a few of the senior ministers and the Taoiseachs. So maybe the scenario with Patrick O'Donovan is he was the junior minister to Shane Ross, who wasn't re-elected. So maybe that's why he's doing it in the absence of Shane. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. There's also a concerning story from the Castletownbere area about a trawler crew that tested positive for COVID-19.
That's right. This trawler came in around the third week of April and unloaded its catch in Castletownbere and went off again. But by the time they got back to Spain, the captain and about 6 crew had come down with the COVID virus. Now it seems that none of them stepped on shore when they were in Castletownbere unloading the catch, which is a good thing. And the department, without specifying, it says that all the protocols were observed, but that didn't stop the local fishermen's organisation in Castletownbere. Patrick Murphy, the head of that, is quite angry that there's a bit of a grey area there as regards what the true protocols are with people coming in off if they come in off fishing boats. So he wants clarification from the department about that, and that's no harm, because people seemingly can still come into the country on flights and boats and go where they like, which isn't going to help in stopping the spread of the virus. So he is right.
And it is, I think, the most recent stats show that it is the biggest port. I think it overtook Killybegs last year as the biggest fishing port. And obviously he's saying that the trade lines need to be kept open. So therefore, those working there need to be kept safe.
Yes, they have to be protected. Yeah, definitely.
There's kind of the other side of the social distancing and the hospitality trade is represented in a piece there by Emma Conley on page 4 about the restaurants. So 2 very high profile restaurants have come out in West Cork saying they want to open earlier and that
That's
they
right.
can for social distancing.
That's right. The Pilgrim's Rest in Rosscarbery and the Bastion in Kinsale, they seem to, they really are between a rock and a hard place, because the 2 months of July and August are where they make the majority of their money for the year. And if they're not allowed to open during that period, it seems there's them and maybe other restaurants might not reopen next spring because of that. And their sentiments have been echoed by a few hoteliers as well, including Neil Grant, the general manager of the Celtic Ross Hotel in Rosscarbery, and Michael O'Neill Jr. of Fernhill House Hotel in Clonakilty, because they really they had come through the quietest part of the year, we'd say, from November to February, when the COVID-19 hit in March. And now the likelihood of not being able to open properly in the summer is getting to them, and they're hoping the government will look more favourably. The Restaurants Association of Ireland have come up with a plan, or with proposals that they're putting to government, and they hope that this might persuade the government to look on reopening earlier more favourably.
Right. And then there was another story there that caught my eye, was a nice one from the Heritage Centre in Skibbereen, that they've put some genealogy records online that weren't heretofore available. They're registers from graveyards around the area, and they just make the point that a lot of people, I suppose especially diaspora, have time on their hands. They're going online to find out a little bit more about their families, and they're finding that this is available, and they're just making the point that they've made it very accessible. They have a little video on how to search the database on skipheritage.com, I think is the address. So that's just a nice story for anyone who's interested in tracing some family history.
That's right. Genealogy is huge now, and as you said, while people are in lockdown, they are going to have more time on their hands, and there is a lot of interest, especially from abroad, in tracing relatives and where they're buried and so on like that. So it's a fantastic initiative by Skibbereen Heritage Centre, and as you said, it's user friendly as well because of the video that shows people how to operate the database, and makes it quite easy for people of all ages to have a look at that. So it's as you said, skibbereenheritage.com is the address as far as I know. So worth checking out. Absolutely.
Con, in the second section, the life section, was there anything there that caught your eye?
Yeah, I think the story on the front page about the summer Irish courses not going ahead this year, it applies in our catchment area in Cape Clear and also in Ballingeary. Coláiste na Moon in Ballingeary has been going since 1904, and I think this is the first time it's 116-year history, including like 2 world wars, that it hasn't gone ahead, and that has big implications for a small village like Ballingeary because of the fact that it brings in over the course of the summer about 170 students, and of course parents and so on like that come to bring them there, collect them there. They spend a few bob locally in the shops and the pubs and things when they're there. And as well as that, then there's the jobs aspect. There's about 30 people involved between teachers and their assistants and cooks and cleaners and so on like that, involved in each of the courses, and the majority of those come from the local area. So the loss of the course in Ballingeary is a big loss indeed. And also in Cape Clear, they would have about 140 students between the 3 courses that they do in Cape Clear. And the youngsters, when they come there every summer, they bring a bit of vibrancy to the island. And again, you have the economic effect on that because of the ban of teas and so on like that, that keep students in both places. So it's not a great thing to happen. The college in Coláiste Pobal Cléire has been going since 1967. So it's the first time again that has been shut down for a year, you know. So it really is a big loss, not just the island, but as well you have an offshoot as well for Baltimore and so on like that, where people are coming through there on their way to the island, ferrymen, everything.
That's right, because I think that there was 4 ferries operating in the past there, and they're saying about standing down 3 of them and just operating 1 if they can with social distancing. But they also make the point, Martina Wayloyd from the local community group there says, you know, not to forget that a lot of the courses were booked out and the deposits have been paid, and they have been using some of that money, you know, to prepare for the season. Mm-hmm. So that money has to be refunded now. So they're looking for some government support for that as well. As West Cork grapples with the idea of a new normal, which will have a massive impact on its tourism industry, I'm joined today by 3 people who all have skin in the game, as the saying goes. Helen Collins of the Taste of West Cork Food Festival is in Skibbereen. Neil Grant is manager of the Celtic Ross Hotel in Rosscarbery and a former chairman of the Cork branch of the Irish Hotels Federation. And recently elected TD for Fianna Fáil in Cork Southwest, Christopher O'Sullivan, is in Clonakilty. Helen, you're chair of the Taste of West Cork Food Festival, which, as we know, is one of West Cork's premier festivals now, and it takes place every September. So tell me, what's going to happen this year?
Well, the difficulty is that we would be at our most busy at this point of the year, from, say, January into May, with the programme coming out in probably late June. But of course, the awfulness for this year is that when we were ringing around all the restaurants earlier on, before this actual lockdown, people were scared and didn't know what their future was going to be. And of course, now since the lockdown, there is no business. And it was too hard to ask people to try and commit to September, and particularly when we didn't know whether we were going to be able to meet at all or be in a restaurant in September. Obviously, that has all become much clearer now in the last few days, and hopefully the programme will hold and we will be back in operation from late June onwards. So our plan for this year was to kind of change the approach. We can't do the Taste of West Cork as we would normally do it. So we are instead preparing for Tourism Ireland a directory of all events around West Cork, which will be safe events with social distancing. Obviously, things like walks, being on the water, snorkeling, boating, surfing, to name a few, will all be available safely for families. And I know a lot of the boat owners and the whale watching boats are adapting their boats with perspex and so on and so forth to make it all safe for families, so that they will take maybe one unit at a time. I live in Baltimore. Even in the lockdown, we're having an amazing experience because we have a Michelin star chef down at the bottom of my hill who is doing incredible dinners over the weekend for €20 a head. We have Glebe Gardens supplying food. We have the Jolly Breeze with pizzas. We have Casey's Hotel supplying fantastic prawns and so on. So even in the lockdown, we have an incredible food scene going on in Baltimore. And obviously, when things open up more, and restaurants open up more, that whole food scene can be expanded in a different way to make it safe for people so that people can stay home this summer and really enjoy West Cork. I'm really confident that we can get a fantastic array of services together.
So the bottom line is the festival is going ahead on the same dates, am I right?
I think the festival in its current form, in the form that we have known it up until now, will not be proceeding in September because the amount of work that would be required couldn't just take place during the months of February, March, April and May.
But something will be
I'm sure we will put together something special and bijou now that we know that we can be open. And, you know, we have so many fantastic supporters here. They're already willing and able, the participants in the locality, to step up once it becomes clear exactly what can be achieved. So yes, we will be doing it, probably in a slimmed down version, but we will be spreading ourselves and our promotions and our events and make them available to people during July, August and September.
Okay, so you may even be a bit of a bellwether for what's going to happen to the food industry in West Cork, given that September is good timing. Hopefully we'll be really getting back to some kind of a new normal then, and people will be keeping a close eye on probably how you're organising it.
Well, I would say in one sense we're in our traditional format we'll be slimming ourselves down, but in a different format we'll actually be really expanding ourselves. So it will be very interesting. You're absolutely right. To see how that July, August, September concept of available services and food offerings will work out into the future.
Right. Now, as a sector as a whole, how do you see the future of food in West Cork? There's probably two prongs to it. There's the service end of it, the restaurants, the cafes. There's also the suppliers and the producers. Do you think this is a good opportunity maybe for those producers to do something different and get in ahead of the act?
Well, West Cork is an amazing place, and I have no doubt that Christopher and Neil will agree with me fully in that. And people in West Cork are incredibly flexible. They're highly intelligent. Yeah. They're very innovative. And I have no doubt we will make the very, very best of our learnings from this extraordinary event of COVID-19. I sincerely believe we will survive and survive well because we will reinvent ourselves. And I think what will emerge out of it will be what West Cork is really best at, and that is being brilliant. to be honest with you.
Right. So on that note, Neil, talk to us a little bit about the hotel sector, because it's going to be very challenging for you, I'd imagine, when you do reopen. How are you going to, what's the hotel of post-COVID-19 going to look like?
I think it's going to be a real challenge. I think the great thing about tourism and hospitality is we've always been really adapting and kind of flexible, and we've come through many crises before, but this is one like no other. So I think that the big challenge you have is there's a cash flow challenge, because unfortunately, if you'd given any hotelier this scenario 8 months ago and said, this incident is going to happen, this global event is going to happen, when is the worst time in the year it could possibly happen, you would have said March, because you're coming out of 4 or 5 loss-making months where cash flow is tight, and then you're going into Patrick's weekend and it's a nice boost and it gets you going. Then you've got Easter, and again that's 2 good solid weeks of family business. You then go into the May bank holiday weekend and the June bank holiday weekend, and you're cooking on gas then. And then you've got this, really the summer in its entirety is 7 or 8 weeks of bumper summer months, and you're making your money there. And actually, once you get beyond September, then very much it's becoming loss making again, and you're sustaining yourself through the winter. So the timing has been woeful. So whatever we do, and we will come up with ways to get through it. It's the challenge is now that the new normal for us is actually staff wearing PPE for different kind of tasks that they carry out. In the kitchen, I'm sure it'll be face masks and such like, and there's even talk in the front of house that you'll need to wear face masks and gloves at all times. In terms of crowd control, we're a busy hotel. Anyone who drives past the Celtic Ross comments on how busy the car park is. We're a social hub in lots of ways. We're going to have to restrict that, which is the sad thing about it, because we physically will not be allowed or able to take in the volume that we sometimes have taken in and dealt with very well. But because of social distancing, we'll be only able to take a fraction of the business. So we'll need to start managing that from the moment the car enters the car park, and we control the parking that is and how it works. And then we'll need to control the number of entrances. In the past, we've got a hotel entrance, a bar entrance, a leisure centre entrance. We'll need to try and kind of contract them into 1 or 2 entrances maximum and try and segregate our guests. So that's going to be a manpower issue as well, because it'll cost more money and more labour. Labour is already 42% of our operating costs, 42% of our revenue, or 43% of our revenue in some cases in hotels. And so then to have to manage that and take in less business, there's going to be a lot of juggling of sums as to how you make it all work out. So it's going to be interesting, I'll say. I'm not for being gloom and doom. That's the challenges we have. That's the hand we're dealt. We're in the process of building our SOPs so that we have operating procedures that we work by, because number one, when guests do come back, they want to know that they're safe. They want to know, I'm coming to a hotel, this hotel is on their game, they've got every process in place so that I can relax and enjoy myself. I still, whether it's from behind a mask or if for some reason we can operate in a manner without masks, the smile is still there, and the warmth of the welcome is still there. And, we're just trying to think now of creative ways that, irrespective of what's thrown at us, how do we ensure that the Irish hospitality, the West Cork hospitality, is to the fore? And so that's the space we're in. But it's I think with it being late July, we'll be running out of time a little bit with regards to the cash flow end of it. So It will be a challenge.
Well, that brings me nicely on the talk of cash flow to Christopher, probably. I know you spoke recently in the Dáil, Christopher, about tourism in West Cork, and you had a pretty frightening figure there of that the sector had employed 6,000 people, and now we're down to 400 in the sector. So you've also mentioned VAT in your speech. Now, I know that a lot of the organisations are looking for a reduction to 0% VAT for at least 12 months, and also supports as regards rents, So how do you think you're going to be able to help your constituents, basically, if and when Fianna Fáil do sign a deal to go into government?
Okay, well, that's a way off yet, but we'll get to that. But in terms of the supports, I think when we're thinking about what supports and what measures we need to take, we need to listen to the industry. We need to listen to the likes of Neil. We need to listen to the likes of Helen, who know this industry inside out. And they've some quite simple, basic, straightforward, but common sense requests. And one they've been calling for the very start is the 0% VAT rate during the course of the pandemic, with a gradual, I suppose, to come back to the 9%. And I was delighted that's something I called for in the Dáil yesterday. I finally got back into the Dáil chamber, which was great. And I was glad that I got to speak on tourism, which is a topic that I've been passionate about since my days in Clonakilty Chamber of Commerce. But I was delighted to hear the Minister, Brendan Griffin, state quite clearly that he agreed with the 0% VAT rate. The issue is, unfortunately, because tourism isn't a dedicated ministry, he's not at cabinet. But that was a significant statement from him to say that he agreed with the 0% VAT rate. But something that I called for yesterday, and I think I was the only TD to do so, is a specific and sizable grant aid package. And the reason I'm calling for that for the tourism sector in particular is that tourism SMEs, okay, there are finances there, there's low interest rate loans, etc. But tourism related small and medium sized businesses are finding it the hardest of any business to access finance from the banks. The reason the banks are questioning their viability and they're putting them in a high risk category. So they're having to go through this rigmarole and red tape and bureaucracy, and they're coming out with nothing. So that's why I requested yesterday for sizable grant aid to put money in the pockets of these business owners so that they can pay staff, so that they can retain staff, and they can keep their businesses afloat. They're just some of the measures. There was a lot more measures mentioned yesterday, but I think that's for, that you could have a whole debate about what can be done,
Well, I suppose one of the other questions is probably the PUP payment, the pandemic payment of 320 odd, is it, for people who are out of work, 350, and how long that you think we can sustain paying that, because that is quite vital, I think, even beyond maybe September for some companies. Is there any hope?
Look, I was delighted to hear the Taoiseach today state that he expects the PUP to be extended beyond mid-June when it was originally intended to be stopped. Also, I heard him make a statement when he made a recent appearance on the Late Late Show. That's how I get my news now, from the Taoiseach. When he said that he would look at it on a sector by sector business I suppose basis, so that tourism, look, we can all agree here, I think, while we are adaptable and we are here in West Cork, we're very innovative, we do have the longest road back in terms of recovery. So it's going to have to be looked at differently to the other sectors. So whether it's extending the PUP, whether it's introducing that significant grant aid that I spoke about, just giving them access to finance, because 2020 has been an economic write-off. As Neil rightly said, they've come from the dreary months of January and February into an economic lockdown in March. I really do sympathise. But as Helen has said, and as Neil said, we're adaptable, we're innovative. And then if they listen to us here in West Cork, I think we can set the template for how the rest of the country can come out of this,
And that brings me nicely back to Helen, because you've often spoken about the brand West Cork, Helen, and you're a great ambassador for West Cork as a brand. How do you see that we could be a little bit innovative here, in that others maybe can learn from what we can do post-COVID? Or have you been in contact with any other big tourism areas to see what they're doing?
I have actually been in contact with Niall Gibbons, CEO of Tourism Ireland, and it's always wonderful talking with Niall, because he's so positive and so energetic, and he is so determined to really turn this around and turn it into something good. And it's as a result of my conversation with him and Sean O'Driscoll that we are putting together these packages of what is safe and good and available for this summer, because I think people are desperate to come on holidays to West Cork. I think if you asked the entire of Ireland if they could come to West Cork in the morning, I'd say they would be in their cars and down the road. But people need to feel, as Neil put it, they need to feel they're going to be safe. And if we can provide practical solutions to their safety, I think they will be here for the summer. I think they will be here because it's going to be economic. I saw today that there was some talk of staycation vouchers. There was a call for those, which would be absolutely brilliant. And I think if we give them the means, that's why I want to do this directory, because I want to be able to say to a family in Dublin or Midlands or wherever, here is what you can do in West Cork. It's actually very simple. You can come and stay with Neil. You're going to be safe in the hotel. And here are a range of activities that the family can do for a whole week. And if you can't get access to restaurants because they're going to be so restricted, I think arrangements need to be made for people to be able to get takeaway food and have a nice place to eat it in, because so many brilliant restaurants are providing such excellent takeaway services. So people can stay in self-catering very safely. It's all of those things that are sensible and need to be put in front of families and people who want to go on holidays in Ireland this summer. And I think everybody will want it. We just need to make sure that they see that we have it available, that they see that that it is safe and is doable. And I think they will be in their cars and coming to West Cork. I really sincerely believe that, if we give it to them as a practical solution.
Build it and they will come, basically, is your message.
Say again, sorry?
Build it and they will come is the message.
I believe, sincerely, it will happen if we make it so that it is a good, sensible and safe package. It will happen.
And Christopher, you want to get in there?
Yeah, and I'm delighted to see this conversation take such a positive turn, because there's a lot of debate about where the tourism recovery will begin first. Will it be in the urban areas of Dublin, or will it be in rural Ireland? And I think it should be, and common sense would say that it will begin in rural Ireland, because that's where we can establish the safest brand of tourism. So when you think of activities like whale watching, like boating, like going to Mizzen Head, Garnish, maybe golfing on the Old Head, these are all activities where you can enjoy the scenery and you can establish safe social distancing. The issue arises, of course, is where do people stay? Where do they eat? Where do they go for a drink? And that's where I think the government needs to step in now and give real clear guidance on what measures hotels need to take, what measures restaurants need to take, how far apart their tables should be. Will the solutions that people are coming up with, like the perspex divisions, will they suffice? If they get that clear guidance now, they can prepare for maybe salvaging the end of a tourism season. But where better to practice safe social distancing tourism than West Cork? I think there's something there certainly to grasp onto.
I think the Wild Atlantic Way will probably come into its own, possibly, as a brand because of that.
Absolutely.
Neil, you want to get in there? And also, I just wanted to ask you, Neil, just before you get in there, and you may just refer to this, you have been a very good ambassador yourself for bringing in people from abroad. So are you parking that for the moment? Going to concentrate on the staycation, maybe?
Look, I think we've what we have done with the overseas market. One thing I think there is a hint of caution you need to have about completely relying on Ireland and in the domestic market is there was 11 million overseas guests almost came from further afield, and we're trying to replace them with 4.5 million Irish. Now, at the same time, those 4.5 million Irish will do probably all their holidaying in Ireland, so they will potentially take 3 weeks of holiday in Ireland where they previously took maybe only a week or however many days. So the length of stay will expand and will go up. So there is a definite opportunity. I think what Christopher said is key. The urban areas, I think if you're a city centre hotel, you'll be really worried because you're not a traditional holiday destination. You know, they're very reliant on corporate business, which is a lot of that can come from overseas. So I think for
weekends away, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, parties from cities in the UK and that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that they're you know, we're probably well placed that we will get a bounce and get a domestic bounce that might well get us through. Now, I love nothing more than showing off West Cork to someone from Holland or from the USA and so on. I think the USA is a big market, and that's a worry. And I think we don't want to do without that for too long. We've got some good relationships with good operators in the likes of Holland. I spoke to him this morning on a Zoom call, this chap, and he brings me over, I think, 500 or 600 people from room nights, from Holland in a year, which is a nice number, and they're individual travellers who are fly drive. They're a nice little bit of business for us that we don't want to lose. So we're going to try and get that back for next year. But we obviously are probably shifting our focus to predominantly domestic. But I don't want to, the UK is still a close neighbour. There is ferry access from the UK. If I was travelling tomorrow, when I go back to see my family in Scotland, I'll take the ferry rather than a flight, being straight probably. But at the same time, if I did take a flight, what better airport to go out of than Cork? It's a nice, spacious terminal. It's, you're through it nice and quickly. It's not the crowded kind of, Heathrow Airport or whatever. So I think it'll just be about thinking outside the box with the overseas market, that we can choose their route to get there as easily as possible. I think direct access will be key. I think if you've got to go through hubs, I think then we'll lose out. So I'm still going to keep an eye on it, because it will come back at some point, and I think it's short-sighted not to. And we want to show West Cork to the world, so we do want people from all over the world coming to West Cork. There's no doubt about that. So we'll keep on pursuing it, but certainly it's parked for the moment within reason to focus domestically. There's no doubt.
Okay, thank you very much, folks. Excellent, and best of luck and stay safe.
Well, here now we have this week's musical treat. The Island Vibes Choir, founded in 2017 by Niamh McCarthy, has over 40 members. Most of them came together recently to record a version of Make Your Own Kind of Music, and a wonderfully uplifting video, which is on the Island Vibes page on YouTube. So take a listen. Thank you for listening to the Southern Star Coronavirus Podcast. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our podcast, which is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Acast, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.